Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Tapped In here at BrewBodz Barbells, where we lift pints and weights. And today we have a big craft beer story coming out of Houston. And this one's interesting because it's not just about the beer, it's about a brewery, a landlord, real estate, and it's about that World Cup. And it's about what can happen when a local business sits in the middle of an area that suddenly becomes extremely valuable, right? Today we're talking about Eighth Wonder Brewery in Houston, Texas. It's downtown, it's right across the street, basically from the Astros Stadium. I've been there a handful of times, especially while I lived there. And today's source is from the Chron, right? And so it's basically it's basically saying Heady Brewing Company LLC, which does business as Eighth Wonder Brewery, has filed a lawsuit against its landlord, Macy Family Properties. And the brewery alleges that the landlord is actually trying to force them out of their long term East Downtown location that I just talked about ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to be clear there is an active legal dispute, right? So we're not going to say one side has officially won or lost here. We're looking at it, what has been reported and what Eighth Wonder is alleging in court documents, and why this story matters for craft beer as a whole. Because this one right here is one of those stories that starts local, but the lesson can apply way beyond Houston. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it up on my screen over here. Okay, so what I got here is the actual Chron article pulled up right here. The headline basically says Houston's Eighth Wonder sues landlord over alleged scheme to remove them. And the sub headline gets right to the big part. In court documents, the EADO brewery claims it's being pushed out over the FIFA World Cup. Now, that is a heavy claim because if you're a brewery, your location is not just your address, it's a part of your identity, it's your customer basis, the culture, it's your local tap room, it's your regulars, and it's like it's basically your staff's routine. It's where people basically had, their first dates, probably at these seats right here. And you're talking about birthdays, game days, after an Astros game, going down there and hanging out, bad days that turn good, and random Saturdays that somehow became tradition, right? A brewery is not just, tanks and taps. It's a much more than that. A brewery has become a part of the neighborhood's nervous system, you would say. So when a brewery says, we think we're being pushed out, that personally gets my attention, right? So let's break this down, right? So according to the Chron, sorry, Eighth Wonder says it has been operating at its East Downtown property for over 10 years. The article says the brewery moved into the 47,500 square foot property around the 2015 to 2016, if I remember right. They made improvements and paid rent to the original owners, right? The article then reports in April of 2021, Eighth Wonder and the previous property owner basically agreed to a 6-year lease extension. Pretty normal. Eighth Wonder claims there was a typo, though, in that agreement describing the property has 37,500 square foot when it should have read 47,500, right? So, but the property was still referred to as the same block as, 464 property. And so then in June of 2022, the Macy Family Properties acquired the property, according to the lawsuits cited by Chron, right? Now, this is where things get messy, right? So Chron reports that tensions began in January 2026 when Macy sent Eighth Wonder a notice accusing the brewery of defaulting on the lease. According to this article, though, the landlord alleged a possible transfer of control of operation, insurance issues, and late fees, right? Eighth Wonder denied those charges and said it responded to the allegations. So then, Chron, according to this article, Macy later sent a notice of termination right here. So they basically sent a letter of termination and clarified that the alleged transfer of control was tied to what is called an unauthorized sale or assignment to the Bayou City Hemp Company. Eighth Wonder denied that happened. Okay. But then there was another wrinkle that actually came in. So Chron reports that Macy later accused Eighth Wonder of occupying around 10,000 square foot of unleased property. That could be a big issue. But Eighth Wonder said the landlord did not clearly identify what or where that space was. So now you have a fight over default claims, control, lease language, square footage, possession, and whether the brewery has the right to stay where it has been operating all these years. This is not just a little disagreement. This is a full taproom thunderstorm. Okay. So now what I want to get into, like, this is the part that, like, personally makes this story bigger than it may come across. Eighth Wonder alleges that the real motivation behind all this is the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Houston is one of the host cities, and the official FIFA Fan Festival in Houston is scheduled to take place in East Downtown between June 11th through July 19th. Okay, that alone, FIFA lists the location as 2301. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I had to find it again, but they basically say it's 2301 Dallas Street in Houston's EODO area. That puts East Downtown in major spotlight, right? So let me jump back over. All right, so that puts that right there. So this isn't just a few more people might come through town. This is global attention, especially if you know soccer. Soccer fans, tourists, media, sponsors, vendors, pop-ups, the food, the beer, all the additional events that occur. The hospitality industry alone would boom. So a full economic pressure cooker, literally with cleats on. And Chron reports that Houston's World Cup activity is expected to draw as many as 500,000 people to the city and generate $1.5 billion in economic impact. ABC 13 also reported that Houston World Cup host committee leadership has projected 500,000 visitors and $1.5 billion in economic growth alone. So now, look at this from a brewery's standpoint. Unique scenario. Okay, you've been in this neighborhood for over a decade. You've helped make that area a destination. It was for me. They had this super well known "We Heart Houston," um, like big monument in the back of the brewery. It is definitely a spot to go and take pictures, right? They built the tap room, they've built the regulars, they've built the brand literally around Houston culture. And now, right before one of the biggest global events in history comes to your neighborhood, your landlord is trying to terminate the rights to your property. This is why this story hits hard, because whether the court ultimately sides with Eighth Wonder or the landlord, the allegation alone points to something local businesses worry about all the time. What happens when the neighborhood you help build becomes too valuable for you to stay in? I know people in the real estate, they got an opinion about that. It works out in some favors, some it doesn't, right? Now, this is where I personally want to break down into the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, because every story like this has layers. We all know that. It's not just about headlines, right? So, the good. The good is that Houston is about to get a massive opportunity. The World Cup is huge. We all know that. It's basically the global sensation sport. The FIFA Fan Festival is going to be put in East Downtown in front of locals, tourists, and international visitors. Houston's official fan festival site describes it as a free public destination for live match watching or match viewing and global celebration throughout the tournament, right? This is huge for all of those restaurants down there, huge for the bars, the hotels, huge for transportation. Uber, I imagine, is going to be up crazy. It's going to be huge for small businesses that get a chance to serve people who have never stepped foot in Houston before, let alone the United States. And so, for a brewery like Eighth Wonder in that area, the World Cup could be the kind of moment that brings thousands of new people into that brand following their social media. This is good. Craft breweries thrive when people discover them in real time. Somebody comes to Houston for soccer, walks into Eighth Wonder, has a beer, buys a shirt, follows them online on social media, Facebook, whatever they're on, and now that brewery becomes a part of their Houston memory. Let alone go back if they came over here visiting from other countries. Now they're you got Eighth Wonder on a shirt in Spain or Portugal. This is the dream scenario. This is what local craft beer should be doing during a global event like this. But let's cover that bad, right? The bad is that these big events bring big money. Big money changes how people act. When an area becomes valuable, everyone starts looking at the map differently. Landlords, developers, sponsors, event organizers, outside businesses, pop up operators. Everybody starts seeing dollar signs where local businesses see home on a normal daily basis, right? This is not just about Houston. This is something breweries all over the country should pay attention to because a lot of breweries are not sitting on property that they own. Very rare. A lot of people lease. And when you lease, your future is tied to that paper, those terms, the amendments, relationships, rent, property value, and sometimes a landlord's bigger plan. I definitely know that. I deal with a lot of contracts. And so I definitely know that everything is, if it's not spelled out, you're sitting on a ticking time bomb. But that doesn't mean every landlord is bad. Not at all. Okay. There are great landlords who work with breweries, understand the value that they bring to the neighborhood and their business. But it does mean breweries have to understand that real estate is a part of the business, right? It's not just beer or branding like we talk here. It's not just taproom vibes. The lease does matter, and the square footage matters. The renewal terms matter. That assignment language that they were talking about in the article, that matters. Um, Insurance language matters. I know a lot of breweries dealing with that right now. And so the tiny details all do matter because when money is big enough like this, that fine print starts wearing those steel toed shoes, man. But let's cover that ugly because the ugly is the possibility that a local business can help build the value of a place and then become vulnerable once that value gets too high. This is the part that bothers people, especially me, because breweries often take risks on neighborhoods early. That's why a lot of people go to these like business parks in the middle of nowhere. They move into warehouse districts and industrial areas, older buildings, places that are not polished yet. They bring in foot traffic that otherwise was never there. They create gathering spaces. They host events. They bring in the food trucks. They support charities. That's important. They give people a reason to be in that area. But then, once the neighborhood is hot, the brewery can suddenly be treated like an obstacle, basically, instead of one of the reasons why that place became so special in the end. That is the ugly part of growth. The same energy that brings opportunity can bring that displacement idea. And that's why this story deserves a lot more attention than it is. Because this is not just about one brewery fighting for one landlord or fighting with one landlord. It's about what happens to local culture when major economic opportunities come crashing into a neighborhood. Do the local businesses get included, or do they get cleared out for the big show? This is the question. Now, here's my take though. All right, hot take. So, if a brewery has spent a decade building into a neighborhood, paying the rent, improving the property, bringing people in that area, literally flocking people to that area, being a part of the local identity, that should matter. Okay. Again, I'm not the court. All of this is allegedly everything, I don't know every detail inside this lease. I'm not pretending to. Yes, I do have pretty good experience with contracts, but a lease is different. But from the an industry standpoint, this story should make every brewery owner, operator, and taproom team look at their own situation and ask those hard questions. Do we understand our lease? Do we know the renewal options? Do we know what happens if ownership of the property changes? Do we know what counts as assignment in the lease or a transfer? Do you document any of the improvements that were made? Do you plan, if the neighborhood around you changes fast? Because craft beer has that romantic side. And I love that. The tanks, the tap room, the regulars, the beer names, that local pride tied to that area, the story behind it. We do storytelling. I focus on that. And the business side is real, though. And sometimes the business side shows up like a bar fight in a suit. This is where breweries need good advisors, great attorneys, great records, great communication. And they need to understand that location strategy is a part of that survival, especially in cities where entertainment districts, stadiums, festivals, big developments can completely change the value of the land around them. Obviously, that's in the bigger cities, but you've got a lot of these surrounding cities that are really popping up. A lot of people don't know. Up in the Woodlands, they have a little venue spot up there. Like the Woodlands blew up. Okay, Conroe just above that was very rural, but now it's growing into that area, and you have breweries up there that are also, getting grown into. So you really got to pay attention to that. Um, for drinkers, though, this is a reminder that when you support a brewery, you are supporting more than beer. You are supporting a physical space, a staff, neighborhood, a small business ecosystem, you would say. The brewery you might look like they might look stable from the outside, but behind those scenes, they are dealing with rent, insurances, utilities, labor, distro, ingredients, the taxes, the permits, stuff that doesn't really get talked about. And that does not mean every brewery, dispute is automatically one sided. I've seen both ends of the spectrum working with a couple of breweries, but it does mean that there's place that is more fragile than people realize. So when you see a local brewery doing good work show up, it's not just for a viral release that they're doing or the festival they're putting on. Show up on a random day, Thursday, a Wednesday. If they're open on a Tuesday, buy the core beer, bring a friend, share their post, go to the event, leave a review. Because local support gives breweries more strength when things get difficult, right? They have a community tied behind them that can help that. In a story like this, attention matters too. When people are watching, it reminds everyone that this is not just a property distribute. Oh man, this is not just a property dispute on the paper, right? This is a business with customers, history, and community around that. And so for breweries, I think there's a few lessons here. First, your lease is not boring. Your lease is a part of the business strategy. Your accountants, the owner, and all of them are definitely got to be intertwined with that. Second, if you're improving on a property you do not own, document everything. I have seen this. Third, if your neighborhood is growing fast, pay attention early. Fourth, if a major event is coming to your area, now not everyone's in this predicament, obviously having the FIFA Cup come through, but prepare not just for sales, but for the pressure. Fifth, your story matters. I will stand by that. Because if something happens, the public needs to understand what your brewery means to the area. Because if something happens, the public needs to understand, what's going on. That doesn't happen overnight. Obviously, this is built through years of storytelling, community work, those events you're putting on, and showing people who you are. And honestly, that connects right back to what I've been talking about with brewery media. Tell the story before you need people to understand it. And so, because when the fight comes, whether it's a lease issue like Eighth Wonder's dealing with, a closure threat, a zoning issue, or a distro problem, I mean, the breweries that have built real community connection are not standing alone. They have people who care. So, this story matters, in my opinion. I've read this a handful of times, and because craft beer is not just liquid, it is a place, and a place is complicated. A brewery can be a manufacturer, a bar, a community space, an event venue, tourism stop, a neighborhood anchor spot, local brand, like a local brand all at the same time. Like you got so much tied to that business, and that makes breweries powerful, in my opinion. But it also makes them vulnerable. Every time you have a moment of power, there is a vulnerability to it. I've seen that in business I had. So that makes, um, it depends on a lot of things. So they depend on foot traffic, local laws, property access, lease access, like zoning basically. But they depend on people being able to physically gather, right? Like when you add a global event like the World Cup in the mix, everything just blows up to the 10th degree, right? Um, the opportunity gets bigger, the risks get bigger, the money obviously gets bigger, but that pressure comes with it, and suddenly the local tap room is not just a tap room anymore. It's standing on land that other people may see as a gold mine. We all know how that is. So, if you've ever lived in an apartment or a house, every year the rent goes up. Well, at the same time, if that neighborhood just blows up, they put a bunch of restaurants, that rent or your mortgage or anything's going to start skyrocketing around that, like your home value, everything. So this shows a collision between local craft beer and massive global economics. And this is exactly the kind of thing people need to understand if they care about where this industry is heading. So, my final take, guys, the World Cup should be an opportunity for Houston's local businesses. Uh, I live there. I love that city, and you know, I'd go back. It's a beautiful city. It should bring people into neighborhoods. It should showcase that city. It should let visitors experience what Houston actually feels like, not just a polished event, with no local soul. Like, there's so much there. And breweries like Eighth Wonder that are right there are part of that local identity. And again, the court will have to sort out the legal side, of course, but for the craft beer side, right? This story raises a bigger question. When a local brewery creates value in that neighborhood, like we talked about, does it get to benefit when the spotlight arrives? Um, or does the spotlight make it easier for someone else to push them aside? This is the part I'll be watching personally. This is why this matters beyond Houston, because this can happen in your city or town. Other breweries are in fast growing neighborhoods. Like, you probably know one or two right now, and that's something I would watch. So let me know what y'all think. Is this a landlord and a tenant dispute? Oh my God, I cannot say that. I'm thinking it. I can see it in my head, but I can't say it. Is this like a landlord or a tenant um, dispute? There we go. No editing, dude. I'm just gonna record what I'm thinking, man. I'm going. I'm in the zone, right? So, or is this a bigger issue where the local businesses help build those neighborhoods, then get squeezed when the money shows up, right? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you've enjoyed this breakdown of what I got going on, make sure you like the video, guys. Subscribe to the channel and follow along over on my Instagram as well at BrewBodz and Barbells. I truly appreciate it. Uh, Especially on a video like this, Eighth Wonder would really appreciate that. I'm going to tag them and all their information in the description box as well. I'm going to keep bringing these craft beer news articles, the brewery stories, the industry breakdowns, and my take on what all it means to me, right? As someone that's like fully invested in this industry. Because there's always more going on behind that pint that you're drinking, and people don't know that. So, um, I'd love to cover that and let everyone know what's going on. So, I'm Bennett with BrewBodz and Barbells, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.